Community High School District 303 Board of Education regular meeting is now in session. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greeny.
Here.
Hill. Here. Hoheimer.
Here.
Rui.
Hi. Here.
Ridley.
Here.
Howard.
Here. We do have the required quorum and we may proceed with board business. At this point, I want to call your attention to one change to the agenda. Those of you with an agenda in front of you, under 5.2, policies for a first reading, I would like to ask that you pull policy 3.50 for further review and be brought back at a future date. But that's the only change that I'm aware of at this point. Next item on the agenda would be the approval of minutes. Those minutes being the student achievement meeting of January 15th. We also have the policy committee meeting, the regular board meeting, and the closed session board meeting. And those three meetings are all of January 26th. We have a special closed board meeting of February 2nd, a special closed board meeting of February 9th, and a special closed board meeting of February 16th. At this point, I would be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Wrigley. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Wrigley. At this point, is there conversation or corrections around the minutes? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Hill. Aye. Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes stand approved as presented. Next item on the agenda, communications, public comments, and participation. As is our tradition, we'll begin with board applause. We'll start with you, Mr. Allison Greeny, if you're willing.
I am willing.
Thank you.
Able.
And able.
Congratulations to our speech team. They've completed their season up through state. They actually won regionals for the 7th consecutive year. They won the sectional, and they had 8 that qualified to go to state this past weekend. And junior Riley Bloom won 9th in special occasion speaking at state. So congratulations to them. Some of those individuals will compete at the nationals of the NFL tournament.
Thank you, Mr. Allison Greeny. Mr. Hill, do you have something?
Yes, I do. I'd like to congratulate the PCHS dance team. They made it to the state competition. They were among the top 30 teams in 3A competitive dance teams across the state. They didn't make it to the finals, but I want to read a note here from Ms. Johnson, who's their coach, that said, "What a wonderful ride it has been, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. It's been a privilege to coach these fine young women. Not only did these women represent us well on the floor, but they've been great ambassadors off the court as well." So I want to thank Ms. Johnson and her team for representing Pekin very finely, not only at the competitions and at all of our sporting events, but also as ambassadors for the school. So congratulations to those young ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. How about you, Mrs. Hoheimer?
Well, I'm just going to echo Eric's sentiments and Mr. Allison Ridley's sentiments for the speech team.
That'll work. How about Mr. Wrigley?
I would just like to wish the Pekin boys basketball team good luck in the regional game against East Moline on Monday, March 2nd. Good luck to those guys.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. How about you, Mr. Rui?
I know that this gentleman's already been recognized once at a basketball game during retirement. I was unable to attend that event due to another obligation. However, I just wanted to echo again and congratulate Bob Neal for his time here at the school, and as not only he was a wonderful teacher. I had the opportunity to work with him at West Campus, and he was also a fantastic golf coach, fine role model for the kids. I had 2 kids play golf for him, and he was one of those people that he was coaching a sport, but he was teaching kids out there, and he taught them a lot of life lessons. My boys had really nothing to do with golf, so I appreciate him and what he did for the golf program, but also what he did just for young men as he coached them through the years.
Thank you, Mr. Rui. I'd like to direct my board applause tonight at the young people here in the CTE building. The first one I'd like to point out to you, I have 4 quick short ones. Just thought you might want to hear that our rifle team is ranked 9th in the nation at the Army National Competition in Ohio. The second one I want to point out is a total surprise to me, and I wonder if it will surprise any of you. Mr. McCann has a Cyber Patriot team that finished 5th in the Midwest. The Cyber Patriot is made up of a group of Mr. McCann's networking students who meet for several Friday evenings over the course of the year to try to fix vulnerabilities in the computer systems the Air Force have set up. Over 2,000 schools and military installations have high school teams. So I guess maybe they're learning to thwart hackers, is that right, Ms. Brucker? Well, I think that's just incredibly neat. Also wanted to point out to you that someone from Ms. Brucker's graphics class, a young man named Ryan Cargill, designed the new Kiwanis logo for our local chapter of Kiwanis. And then the last one that's kind of interesting as well as part of some of our curriculum changes. If any of the board members are interested, they could attend sometime, but Ashley Sharp from math and our own Greg Reese have been running pilot lessons for the new algebra tech class next year. It's very exciting to see them develop and test run new curriculum for this course. They just completed 1 lesson on Ohm's law and welding. So it's kind of a marriage of 2 different curriculum, and it reinforces the need to each end of the equation. And I think it would be an interesting addition. But that's all I have tonight. Next item, we have something that we all look forward to. It's Emily Pendleton, please.
Thank you. We recently had our Dragon Spotlight the past Thursday, and we actually sold out, so that was really good. We had 20 different acts, and I had many people come up to me afterwards and say that was the best one they've been to in years, so we were really happy. And the teachers also got involved and did a little act at the end, and everyone loved it. We only heard good things, so we're excited for that. Our next event that's coming up is March 6th. We have MORP, so our tickets are on sale now, and we're just trying to boost student involvement with that and get the ticket sales up. On March 2nd, we're doing the Library Family Fun, where they act out the Dr. Seuss book at the District 108, so we have that coming up as well. And then we'll have a little break where we go to the Hopewell Convention with all the other local schools and plan that for next year and get the new people ready. And going along with that, we're also having election packets out, and we're trying to get people to come be representatives and run for exec board. We're looking for a lot of people to get involved because we are losing a number of people this year, so we're really pushing that out there and getting people to want to be on student council. And lastly, we're just collecting pop tabs off of soda cans for Ronald McDonald House for our statewide convention. And we're just getting ready for the last 9 weeks, so we're finishing up here real fast.
Well, Emily, your year is drawing to a close here pretty soon, isn't it?
I'm sad.
Well, you're not the only one who's sad. We're going to miss seeing you. I think you've done a wonderful job making all this seem like fun, but I think the truth of the matter is at some level, It's a lot of hard work.
It's both.
Yeah, it's
Hard
both.
work and fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I never cease to be amazed at the job all of you do together.
Thank
And
you.
And I think it proves the point for all of us. Thank you for your reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item? Looks like we don't have any, so we'll just move on. Next item would be the approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payment of monthly warrants in the amount of $2,014,499.44 for summary information found on page 44 and detailed information found later in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer for approval of the monthly warrants. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Warrants will be paid. You'll also find bank balances, district investments, the medical care report, and the financial statement, all as of January 31st, as well as board bills from February 23rd and manual checks from February 23rd on pages 46 through 107. Next item on the agenda. We have a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Also, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Also, we have the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, and also the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body. Do I have such a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Hill. Would you call the roll, please, Mr. White?
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. At the conclusion of closed session, the board will return to continue with board business. Indicate the board is back in open session at 7:24 p.m. Next item on the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Before we have a vote, I would like to ask, is there any board member who would like a separate vote on a particular item? Hearing none, I'd be seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Alessandrini. For board approval of consent agenda item 5.1.1 as presented, including the personnel report, pending background checks as necessary. Are there questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda approved as presented. Next item, we have policies for a first reading. Mrs. Hoheimer.
Yes, the policy committee is presenting 6 policies for first reading. And please note that 2 additional policies listed on the page number to the right are not included because suggested press changes considered during review were confined to just the footnotes, legal citations, and/or administrative procedure references. In addition, 3 policies were held over, actually 4, for a future committee meeting to allow for further time for review and/or revisions by the administrative team and/or additional consideration by the policy committee. The policies for the first read are 4.60, 6.280, 6.340, 7.50, 7.100, and 7.270.
The fact that these policies are coming from committee, a second is not required. Therefore, I'd ask if there is any conversation or discussion around these policies as presented. Hearing none, Mr. White, call the roll, please.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Policies as presented will be held over for action at a future date. Next item on the agenda, the proposed district calendar for the 2015-2016 school year. Mr. DePatis.
You'll find on page 180 of your materials the proposed calendar for the 2015-2016 school year, tentative calendar. The dates are corresponding dates from this year's calendar, and we have worked with the feeder districts to try and correspond and coordinate those dates, but our calendars are as close as possible for the upcoming year. So it's my recommendation that the board approve that tentative calendar for the 2015-2016 school year as presented.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. I'd be seeking a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Second, Mr. Alessandrini. Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mr. Alessandrini to approve the proposed district calendar for 2015-2016 as presented. Are there comments or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley,
Aye.
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Proposed calendar approved as presented. Next item, we're looking for a resolution for listing the Building Trades House, 1804 Hunter's Trace, Pekin. Mr. DePatis.
Last month, the board put the 1804 Hunter's Trace out to rebid, and we received no bids on that, so I'm asking for approval that we list the house with a real estate agent to affect the sale of the Building Trades House. Brad Barner is the agent we've been using, and we will continue to use him to continue selling this house.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. We'd be recommending board adoption of the resolution granting the superintendent the authority to engage the services of a licensed real estate broker to effectuate the sale of the Building Trades House as presented and to sign all documents as necessary on behalf of the district. Do we have such a motion?
Motion for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Are there questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Resolution adopted. Next item, Vision 2020 resolution. Again, Mr. DePatis.
You'll find on page 182 of your materials the resolution for the district to support the Vision 2020 resolution. Vision 2020, for those of you who were at the school board conference, you saw that presentation on that. That's a education platform that was put together by the IASA, the IASB, IPA. There were several education organizations that all went together in committees to help formulate this Vision 2020. And I'm asking for a recommendation, or excuse me, a resolution to adopt the Vision 2020 resolution as presented.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. I'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Hoheimer to approve the adoption of the Vision 2020 resolution as presented. Comments or discussion? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Resolution adopted as presented. Next item, request for approval of the district agreement of service addendum with TMC SEA, Medicaid fee for service, Mr. DePatis.
We are currently in agreement with Tazewell Mason Special Education Association and Timberline Billing Services for our fee-for-service Medicaid reimbursement. This is a renewal of the current agreement that we're already in. The fees are remaining the same as they were in the past. We are approving the addendum at the last executive board meeting. TMC SEA approved the agreement. Every district that's a member needs to approve the addendum to go along with that. So I'm asking for approval for the district agreement service amendment to TMC SEA's Medicaid fee-for-service agreement with Timberline Billing Services as presented.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis.
Motion for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mr. Wrigley, for board approval of the district agreement of service addendum to Tazewell Mason County Special Ed Association Medicaid fee for service agreement with Timberline Building Services as presented. Are there comments or discussion here? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Agreement approved as presented. Next item, bid for summer work to replace Building A welding hoods. Mrs. Schaefer.
On page 191 of your materials, you'll find the support from the bid opening that we had in the superintendent's office on February 18th. We did have 4 contractors bid on this welding hood job. You can see in the materials, the highest bid was $260,300 with a low bid of $190,000. If you'll remember, we had put this job out for bid back in June as well, and we pulled it because at the time it was over budget. We only had 2 contractors at that bid opening, and the low bid at that time was $211,000. So I think it served us well to go back out to bid for this job and save about $20,000 on the low bid. So the recommendation tonight would be to have board approval of the base bid as submitted by Kemper Construction in the amount of $190,000 to replace Building A welding hoods subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Were you looking for a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Are there questions or comments on this item?
Question on alternate 1 and alternate 2. We did not do
Alternate 1, let me get back to my page. We asked that this be written with 2 alternates, not knowing whether or not this job would come in over budget. So we wanted to pull out a few things that we knew we could potentially save money on if we felt like we needed to. So the first one, this peer supports, is basically an alternate to pouring an actual concrete slab. The engineer felt like this could be a potential other option by having that instead.
So I get, so we're getting everything,
For
all the
190, right.
190, alternate 1 and 2 would have actually
Make it
both done less work.
Right.
Okay.
But nothing's been specifically until submittals are turned in, I think, to see what the engineer recommends. We haven't necessarily, alternate 1 potentially could happen. Alternate 2, we talked tonight at the O&M committee meeting a little bit about this. This was for the portable fume extractor that was gonna be used for just like the plasma cutter and different things that they could wheel around in the classroom itself. And so if we chose not to go that route, that would be a deduction of about $7,000. But I think we felt tonight at the O&M meeting that that was something that would be well served, and especially too since the base bid came in at such a good price. So.
And Mrs. Schaefer, to clarify, the alternate 1, peer supports, those peer supports would be more cost effective in lieu of perimeter footings, right?
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
gotcha. Any other comments or questions?
I guess just a general question, because of the comments underneath, it seemed like a lot of the bids missed completing the whole package. Has that been typical, or was it just like checklists weren't done and
I think
But it seems like all of them didn't.
for the checklist,
Yeah.
that's something specific to Midwest Engineering that they do, and so I don't know if contractors or BLDD does not do that.
Okay.
And so I don't know if contractors just aren't used to that, you know, certain firms have their little specific works they like to see. Certainly doesn't, I don't think it wasn't something they felt like was gonna throw anybody out, out of, you know, to be able to, right, to make, I mean, the bid was still okay. even
Well,
if they didn't
yeah,
have
it was
the
just
checklist.
kind of
Yeah, and I
unusual
think
that
it's-
all of them didn't do it, yeah.
Right, and I don't know why people, maybe it's because it's the least important thing and trying to get the bid together. The arm weld supports, that was something that the engineer did discuss, that came in, that was, I think, actually an error on their part, that didn't get in as a regular alternate, so it's kind of after the fact. So, but they also, again, didn't feel like that was something that was going to taint any of the way, you know, that the whole package was clear as it was presented, so.
Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley. Aye. Hoheimer.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Welding hoods will be replaced, and I'm sure our students will be very appreciative of that. Next item, bid for summer work to repair theater rigging. Again, Mrs. Schaefer.
On page 195 is the support that BLDD, the architects, did for this bid opening. This was, actually, this is a health life safety project, and so it was something that came through the audit. We had previously had a survey done and had anticipated this project being around $93,000. So we had two companies bid on this project. One was from Chicago, which is the Chicago Flight House, and the other company, they weren't actually present for the bid opening, they're from Ohio. But Chicago Flight House was the low bid at $79,956. There is a comment in the remark about 80 loft blocks that were left off of the original specs, and so that was a voluntary add of $9,775. So the recommendation for the board tonight would be to approve the base bid and voluntary alternate as submitted by Chicago Flight House in the amount of $89,731 to repair theater rigging subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. I'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rui. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Rui, second by Mr. Hill to approve the theater rigging as presented. Any other comments on the matter? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Rui.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Theater rigging will be repaired. Next item, bid for summer work to replace the Building G roof, northwest quadrant. Mrs. Schaefer.
Those materials are on page 197. That bid opening was actually the same day as well, and BLDD did the work for the G building roof specifications. We've talked about this now for several months in the O&M committee as well. This would be a project that would be mainly district funds, and the thought would basically to do that roof in quadrants. So this is the first quadrant, which is the largest quadrant, as well as the one that's in the worst shape. So we did have 5 contractors bid on that. We also had an alternate in this project as well. There's the corridor that connects the F and the G building, and that roof needs replaced as well. So we felt like it would be a good opportunity to put that as an alternate to try to get a better price, since they'll be out here anyway. And that actual, that job is health life safety funds. So the lowest bid was with Wyman Roofing. They had a base bid of $225,000 for the G building quadrant, and then for the alternate, it was $33,000. So the recommendation tonight would be to seek board approval of the base bid and alternate A1 as submitted by Wyman Roofing and Sheet Metal in the amount of $258,000 to replace the building G roof northwest quadrant, subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. We'd be seeking a motion to that effect. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Rui. Further questions or comments?
Has Wyman done work for us before?
They have not. They have done work with BLDD before, and she had no issues with them.
Further questions?
They're from Gary Heights.
They're from Gary Heights. They are local.
Yeah.
Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll begin much needed work on the G roof. Next item on the agenda, reports. We begin with resignations. Mr. Hill.
I want to report Chloe Cox, teacher for the English and Social Studies Department, is resigned her position effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. Katie Hamilton, teacher for the Math Special Education Department, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. Vanessa Leathers, teacher for the Social Studies Special Education Department, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. Elizabeth Osteen, marching band assistant, Cultural Studies Department, effective January 30th, 2015. Pamela Poltz, teacher's aide for the Child Care Program CTE Department, effective February 19th, 2015. And Bethany Whitaker, special education coordinator, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Next item, Policy Committee, Mrs. Hoheimer.
We did not meet this month.
That makes for a short report. Thank you. How about Operations and Maintenance, Mr. Rui?
We did meet this evening in advance of this meeting. Mrs. Schaefer did a wonderful job of outlining and answering questions that actually were notes that I had from the meeting, so I'm going to not repeat what she said because a lot of the things that she indicated were things that I was going to add, but I am going to add a couple of things. In March, we are expecting bids for the walk-in cooler, the stadium, and phase 1 of the softball field, so you can expect to see hopefully bids on those items for next month. In addition, we've needed to move up a few of in our plan of maintenance, we've needed to move up a couple of 3 items actually to different years as a result of requirements with the funding. So those are the A building rooftop units have been moved up to 2016. The F building fan coils and the G building fan coils have been moved up to 2017. And that's just to stay in line with what the requirements are for installation relative to the grants. We were very happy with the number of bids that we've got. I think she's already said that we've got more this year than we've had in the past. And we actually were under budget for the 14-15 projects, those being the theater and the theater rigging and the welding hoods, and we're a bit over budget in terms of the roof and G building. However, I think that there's a chance because of the way it's being done that the bids may be less as we move forward because of work we have to do for the corners on each quad are already going to be done as we move around the roof. So each time we do that work, there'll be less work to be done because it'll have been done the previous year. So all in all, we're pleased with what's going on. They've got a nice plan. They're adjusting the plan as need be, and we're moving forward.
Mr. Rui, you had a great comment at the O&M meeting that I think bears repeating, and it had to do with what the majority of these projects have in common. It was so good you forgot it?
Well, I think it's the blind squirrel situation. I must have found an acorn, and usually that doesn't happen, so I can't remember what
I was incredibly impressed. You made the comment something to the effect that most of these items, if not all these items, have to do with the maintenance of this facility, a responsibility that we all hold dearly.
Well, that is true.
You did say that.
We have said that numerous times in these, to discuss this, and the cost associated with this is, we have an obligation to the community to maintain our facilities, whether it be the football stadium or the roof or whatever. And these projects that these people have worked hard to put together are all involved in good stewardship of our building to make sure it maintains level of quality it is as we move forward, because the school's gonna be here for a long, long time. We gotta maintain it. Bottom line is you just gotta maintain it. It's not gonna stay in the same shape it is year after year after year if we don't take general preventive maintenance action, and that's what these projects for the most part are.
You're absolutely right, and please forgive me if I'd known you were gonna have a memory lapse, I wouldn't have raised it. Next item.
Maybe it was just the way you asked the question, because as soon as you made it more clear, I was able to respond appropriately.
There you go.
Okay.
How about Labor Management Relations Committee, Mr. DePatis?
LMRC did not meet this month.
Another short one. How about Student Achievement Committee, Mr. DePatis?
Student Achievement Committee did meet. We continued our work on looking at 7-period day potentially for next year, looking at potential interventions and how interventions are done in other districts that have 7-period days. We also took the information from looking at class period length that was presented previously to the committee and looked at prioritizing what the committee thought would be the first choice. Not necessarily that would be the choice. It's not, the committee has known all along that it's not going to be we're voting on this and this is what it is. We're looking at what would be the best case scenario and piece it together so that it makes and fits the puzzle the best way possible for the district, the students, the staff. So that's where we're at with that right now.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. Next item, network upgrade, Mr. DePatis and Mr. Steven.
Jason Stefan is our network administrator. He's got some handouts there. I'll help you hand those out.
Mr. Stefan,
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoy the emails you send out every time you take something down and bring it back up. I'm glad you can maintain a sense of humor through the whole process. I think I would be suicidal.
You mentioned that today, something about a car and a tree.
I asked Mr. Stefan to be here tonight just because if there's any questions. What you have in front of you is different proposals that we have received. And the reason we have these proposals, we're looking at trying to use the E-rate funding as a possibility to help us fund some of this upgrade. So we had to file a Form 470 is what they call that. We had to file that in timely fashion so that we could file the 471 by March 26th. The 470 has been filed for 28 days. So we've had that on file, plenty of time. These are the proposals that we have gotten so far that we are looking at. The reason I bring them to you is just to have you have a chance to take a look at them, get a little information. I'm going to ask Jason if he'll speak to the proposals themselves because he can give it to you a little better detail than what I can just because of the technology end of it. So Jason, if you'd like to just kind of give them a breakdown of what the proposals are about, I would appreciate it.
Stand up here.
If you go over the microphone, then it'll be recorded. It's easier for the minutes then.
All right, we'll start with the PDS proposal. PDS is a company out of Commonwealth, Wisconsin. And they are a Hewlett-Packard offering. Our current network is a Cisco network. It's pretty much end of life. The current company that gave us a hardware support contract on it will not do that again after July of this year. And that was a fairly expensive one-year contract. HP does not have any support costs like a NetTech associated with it. They have a lifetime warranty. The first 5 years of their hardware, we get 24/7 support from their their TAC, which is their maintenance line, their support line. After that, it goes, after that first 5 years, it's 9 to 5. You can call them for free, and we get support for free. There's no Cisco SmartNet support. Like with Cisco, we have to pay a SmartNet support every year to be on call their tech line. With HP, it's included in the price of the hardware. So there's no support we'll be paying. But that, we wouldn't have to pay like NetTech to come out and do that. If we have a problem, we call them. If the hardware goes down, they'll send us one in the mail. So we worked through this, and we're still working through this. This is still a rough copy. We have a couple core switches, and then every HP switch outside of that is going to be the same. The speeds on it are going to be determined by what transceiver we put in the fiber module. So it'll either be a 10 gig or a 1 gig. Past that, we're looking at some new racks. The racks that we have are pretty much incompatible with anything we're going to put in. They've been adjusted and rigged over the years that they're pretty bad. So I have equipment sitting on top of equipment in racks because I couldn't find either posts or slides to put them in, so they're just sitting there. On the HP proposal, there's also a proposal for an upgraded firewall. Our firewall's aging as well, and that would get us off of a Cisco contract there as well. And there is also a piece on the back for an IMC software, which is once you purchase it, there's no license cost per year, and it's a one-stop software where I can look at everything on the net. I can look at all the switches, all the servers, everything connected to it, even the wireless access points. So the HP is really looking good right now because we don't have to pay those yearly license fees, yearly support costs, so it's going to reduce that. Plus, I mean, it's heads and tails above Cisco on price. I even added online, it's $174.49 without their project services. If we want them to pre-stage all of the switches and all of the racks and come in and install it for us and cable everything up, it's $13.5. That would speed up the process. I'd send them all their configs, they'd figure out the differences, install the configurations, and basically have it ready to go when it shows up. So that came out to $187 and some change, more close to $180. The NetTech option is a little different. It's basically the same equipment, except for their switches are a little different. They have actually 10 gig switches or 1 gig switches, which will have both in each closet. Theirs has a firewall as well. This also called for another wireless controller and more access points, which would be nice to have a little bit of redundancy and take some pressure off the controller we have now. This also included racks and some more APCs, some more UPS APCs. But as you look on that last, the third to last page, you're going to see their professional services fee is $35.7 to do the same thing that the HP company would be to come in, pre-stage all the equipment, set it up, install it, and make sure it works. And one thing we wanted to talk about on this that we learned is any of this equipment we install is not going to reach its full capacity unless we upgrade the fiber backbone in this building. The fiber backbone is 17 years old, and it will only run at 1 gig speed, so all these 10 gig switches we get won't be able to run 10 gig because of the fiber that's in there. It's single mode, all in 1 gig fiber. So we're looking at Hart to come out and give us a quote and probably get a couple more quotes to take a look at that. But it'll be a lot less fiber than was installed initially. There's a fiber run to each room. So it would just be fiber to the closets. There wouldn't be fiber to each room like there is installed now. So we'd have a lot of fiber to pull out. I ran some rough numbers just sitting out there on fiber. Depending on what code we have to follow. You know, new building code, you usually have to install plenum and plenum spaces. I don't know if they're gonna make us install that. It'd be the difference of like $1.40 per foot on fiber cable. So just a rough estimate on footage would be about $14,000 for the riser rated fiber, where it's gonna be about $40,000 or $48,000 for the plenum rated, which is usually what you have to put in plenum rated spaces. So that is another consideration we have to bring to the table, is that fiber backbone.
If you upgrade the fiber, would that carry us to infinity and beyond?
Hopefully, hopefully as long as we'll be working here.
Kind of what I suspected.
Yeah, we'd upgrade to a 10 gig OM3 multi-mode fiber.
One of the things that would also help us with, we've talked in the technology committee about, you know, if we decide down the road to look at a potential one-to-one. Plus, I think even since Christmas, Jason had mentioned to us in the tech committee that there are about 300 or 400 new devices that are out using, you know, the network, whether it be an iPad or phones on the guest network. So we're seeing that on the wireless as well. That's just putting a little extra strain on that system as well. So with 10 gig, being able to get to that would help with that situation as well. If we do look to the one-to-one later on, moving forward, this would be the infrastructure that would help us out to get to that point if we wanted to.
Any other questions? Mr. Stefan, I thank you for your report. We appreciate the hard work you have been doing and the work that you continue to do, and wish you good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wrigley, did you have a question or?
Oh, I was just gonna make note that I had, at the last time this was brought up, I was a little bit critical because it was kind of sprung on us. But this is exactly what I was looking to see. I'm attracted to the fact that the HP doesn't have the service contracts that the NetTech, is that what it is?
Yes.
Does. I think that's fantastic, so I appreciate your efforts, as well as the technology committee's efforts for this report.
And what we're looking to do is that when we come back next month at the March meeting, just have a recommendation on which proposal we think needs to be approved.
Yeah.
And that way, the 23rd is that meeting, the 26th is the deadline for us to file E-rate. What we would be doing at that point is looking to sign a contract with the company, knowing that the installation would take place after July 1st for the E-rate, pending the approval of the E-rate. Our E-rate right now, we're kind of on the bubble of where, at one point we were at 50% free and reduced, which should give us an 80% potential reimbursement. If we fall below that, which I think right now that's kind of where we're at, then we give us a 60% reimbursement. But looking at that, if we qualify and we're able to get that funding, that would take 60 or 80% of this amount that we've spent and bring it back to us.
So am I hearing you correctly? You don't have any doubts about qualifying, it's just at which level?
It's at which level. The other thing is that they've changed the E-rate system moving into the 15-16 school year. It used to be called Priority 1 and Priority 2. Now it's Category 1 and Category 2, which is a minor change. But they're trying to put more money into the Category 2, and the Category 2 is to create the infrastructure for schools to have the wireless capability and infrastructure for internet throughout every place. So they're trying to put more money into that to get the schools to be able to have that funding available. The funding is still looked at as they try to look at the poorer districts first, and those districts that have a higher free and reduced lunch rate than we may have, so it's going to trickle down. But they are guaranteeing a certain amount of money in that Category 2, so they're really hopeful that it will get down far enough that we will be able to get some of that funding.
Thank you.
Also, real quick, did we add this to this year's or next year's budget? Is this a budget
It's
item?
in this year's.
It's in this year's budget. Okay.
Right, which will have to be,
Amended.
well, we have to amend the budget anyway, so it'll have to be taken out if we get E-rate, because you can't spend the money until after July 1.
And like I said, the contract would be with whichever company would be pending the E-rate funding. That way we're not locked in if we don't get the E-rate funding. But under the circumstances, we may still want to move forward with it because we're going to need to upgrade the network anyway. But it gives us that option by signing the contract that way when we get to that point.
Thank you to everyone involved. Next item, notification of sale of bonds, Series 2015. Mrs. Schaefer.
On page 200 of your materials is just a report that we're required to put in our board packet materials, basically just outlining the sale of the bond. We did close on February 18th. Everything went as planned. Kevin Hyde from Steeple came in and we got all the documents signed, and he showed us comparisons of other sales that went that day, and I think we were competitive, and I think our all-in true costs were under 3%, so I think we're happy with the way that went. So just for your reading pleasure, you can read the bond report if you so choose. So that's all I have.
I can't even address that one. Thank you, Mrs. Saber. Next item on the agenda is future agenda items. Is there a particular item the board member would like to see on a future agenda? And if so, now is your time to let us all know. No future agenda item. Next item on the agenda, announcements about the president. I need to tell you that the CIV-ISB Spring Dinner Meeting will be hosted by Creve Coeur School District 76. It's scheduled for Wednesday, March 4th at Parkview Junior High. Brochures have been distributed, includes directions how to find the place, which is not easy. Registration's at 5:30, dinner is at 6. Business meeting at 6:45, and the breakout sessions will run from 7:30 to 8:45. They have some really good sessions. There's a session on Vision 2020 that we just passed a motion on. There's a session on preparing new board members for success. There's a session on the basics of school finance. And there's a session on briefing for candidates, which are prospective board members. And that last one will be presented in part by our very own Mr. Alessandrini. Well, if you haven't seen him in action, you can go there just to see that. But you need to let Mr. White know by Wednesday, February 25th, if you plan to attend. Next item on my announcements, I need to let everyone know that the board secretary has received the resignation from Superintendent DePatis, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. I know, speaking on behalf of District 303, we thank Mr. DePatis for his service, and we wish him well in his future endeavors. Continuing on, I would ask that board members mark their calendars. The CIV Summer Governing Meeting will be at Cezanne's in Peoria on May the 6th. The CIV Fall Dinner Meeting will be at Tremont High School on October the 7th. And then always pencil in the III Joint Annual Conference in Chicago, which is November 20th through the 22nd. Need to let you also know the next regular board meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for Monday, the 23rd of March, in this room. At this point, I would be looking for a motion for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Wrigley. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Hi.
Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. I need to let you all know that at the conclusion of that closed session, there will be no board business conducted. So for all intents and purposes, this meeting is adjourned at this point in time. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.